Being an idol is sort of a stepping stone, more so than like a final goal. Reality is a lot harsher. I kept on being like, oh no, I'm gonna go to the wrong spot. I'm gonna get my lyrics wrong. I pretty much wind up not having any days off, like ever. I feel like the stereotypical idol fan will see me almost as like the mascot of the group, which is really annoying. I would love to make that change.
Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Heidi. You're a member of the Merkmal Mermal idol group, and so we will talk a lot about idol culture in Japan today, something you're very familiar with for many years already. Because I saw on your YouTube channel when you posted your first video that was over 11 years ago, you said in the description, I want to become an idol and I'm learning Japanese. And here you are today, member of an idol group in Japan.
Yep.
Let's go back to that point.
All right.
How did that interest in Japan kind of get started already like more than 11 years ago?
Well, actually, I first got introduced into like Japanese culture and stuff when I was really little, watching Sailor Moon on TV in America. And other magical girl shows that had been translated and were being broadcast at the time, like Cardcaptor Sakura or Mermaid Melody and Ojamajo Doremi. So I really loved magical girls as a kid. And when I got a little bit older and figured out, oh, these shows are from Japan, instead of just seeing them as shows on my TV, I would like look them up and heard the openings and ending songs. And I really liked those, which led me to look up J-pop on YouTube one day. And the first thing that came up was a song from the Japanese idol group Morning Musume. And I saw their little video with the cute dances and the singing and the cute girls. And I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. And it just kind of spiraled from there.
Wow. So it's like a really long-standing dream of yours to kind of get into that from like childhood, basically.
Yeah, I was like probably like 10 or 11 when I first discovered idols, so it was a long time ago.
And at that time you were already like, I want to go to Japan, or was it more like just I want to be this kind of idol as a
sort of both. I knew that I wanted to at least visit Japan someday. I had always enjoyed singing and dancing since I was a kid. Like before discovering idols, my dream was to be a professional dancer. So finding idols kind of like linked everything together.
Do you remember the first time you came to Japan?
Yeah, I first came when I was 16 during I did a study abroad year in high school and was in Nagoya, going to just a normal high school there, staying with a host family. And yeah, I was there for 11 months. That's
pretty cool to be able to do this kind of exchange in high school already, especially to Japan, which is maybe like unusual, right?
Yeah. I looked around a lot for like different exchange programs that had something that I wanted, and discovered the one that I did go with. And doing the exchange here kind of let me see like how life was in Japan. And led me to really want to move here after I had graduated high school.
So you had this image of Japan tied to idol culture and these classic animes that you were watching as a kid. When you arrived here, did it meet your expectations in a way?
Yeah, I had done a lot of research like outside of that. I had watched a lot of different like content about people living in Japan, or like I had done a lot of research, so I wasn't too shocked by anything really once moving here.
And during that time, you're like, okay, I like it here. I want to come back.
Yeah.
What was your plan to come back and make it as an idol?
I honestly didn't really have a huge plan. I wasn't quite sure how I was going to wind up moving here after graduating high school, because like I know most people, when moving to Japan, they finish college first and then usually come over as an English teacher to get their foot in the door. But idols are very like have a very young expiration date. Most idol auditions cut off at like 18, 20 years old.
Wow.
So I was like, I have to get there fast. Oh no.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah. So I did do like 1 year of college after graduating high school, and was kind of doing a double major in dance and Japanese. A weird combination, but it is what it is. But I kind of like was freaking myself out, like, oh no, but if I don't get there soon, I'm not going to be able to audition for anything. My dreams are going to go down the garbage. Oh no. So I quit after a year of college, and with some family help and like with some savings that I had saved since I was like a kid. Well, it was supposed to be for college, but I used that to move here. And yeah.
So you arrive in Japan and you're like, okay, I need to find auditions, right? I need to find an idol group. So for people who are not really familiar with idol culture in general, can you maybe just generally explain what is an idol group and how is it maybe different than, let's say, just a band in the West, for example?
So idol groups, usually it will be either a girl group or a boy group. They'll usually have, you know, as little as to as many as like 48 members. And I mean, it's kind of like K-pop, but not as polished. You know, they sing and dance. They do other aspects of entertainment work, like modeling, acting, commercials, so on and so forth. Yeah, I mean, like, think One Direction, but kawaii.
One thing I find interesting, though, is, so we both came up with the number 48 thinking of the famous AKB48, right? Yeah. Probably the most famous idol group. What was very puzzling for me always, kind of when I first heard about this group, is in the West you have a band, I don't know, let's say the Beatles, right? The Beatles are the Beatles. You've got the 4 members of the group. Yeah. If they're gone, the Beatles are no more. But in Japan, you have an idol group. It's AKB48. You've got 48 girls, member of the group, but they keep changing.
Yeah.
And the group is still there. It's still AKB48, but it's none of the original members of the group.
Yeah, that's very true.
So how does this work? Is it like more like a brand, and they just kind of...
Yeah, I guess it is kind of closer to that. With almost all idol groups, they'll have auditions periodically for new members, and as members get older, they'll graduate. Being an idol is sort of like a stepping stone in the entertainment industry here, more so than like a final goal. So usually a lot of people start off as an idol to like get a multifaceted like training in all different backgrounds of the entertainment industry and kind of like find what is their niche or like what they're good at. So people often, after being in an idol group for so many years, move on to being actors or actresses full-time, or like singers full-time, stuff like that, or going on to produce their own groups.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that in a little bit, but let's start at the beginning. You said you have to go through an audition.
Yes.
And you said they usually cut off the auditions at like 18 already. That's like super young. You're not
young.
Like an adult at that
point.
So how does this work? How do these auditions work? What are they looking for?
It vastly depends on like how big that group is, or like if it's something under a major label or something more indies. The ones under the big major labels are usually have like a younger cutoff age.
So you see basically like a job ad, right? Idol group recruiting new members, and you can apply and go to like an audition day where they'll have maybe hundreds of people coming in auditioning. Yeah,
kind of like that. Usually, at least nowadays, there's like online applications on different audition websites, or like, you know, they'll have like ads popping up for these auditions on social media.
Oh, wow,
whatnot.
Okay.
And usually almost always you have to apply and like send in like a picture of yourself and like a little profile. And they have to like your picture before you can even actually go to the audition itself. So
it's kind of like a dating app, right? They first choose you based on your looks, and if your looks are clear, then you get the chance to show what you can actually do.
Yep.
When you are invited to the audition and can actually show and perform, What kind of skills do you need to bring to an idol audition?
More so than singing and dancing skills, to be honest. I feel like they look for communication skills. Someone that's able to speak well, someone that seems like they could be interesting, or just has something that fans could latch on to. Of course, like being a really talented singer and dancer could also be a way that you could get chosen, or just being like really, really pretty. But I feel like communication skill is a really big thing that they pick up on.
So how is it for you? Because it's quite interesting. You're a foreigner in a Japanese idol group, in a Japanese idol scene, and I believe there are probably not that many foreigners, right?
No, there's like maybe a handful. There's another handful probably of like Asian foreigners, like, you know, Chinese or Korean members, that kind of slip under the radar more so, I guess you could say. But like really obviously foreign looking, like white, black, Hispanic people, there's really only a couple of us in the industry.
So you mentioned you need to kind of have communication skills, and also they look for something interesting. And one thing I noticed is when I look up your idol group that you're currently a member of, Merkmal Mermal, for each of the members' presentation is like, oh, this member's special skills. And for you, it's making hamburgers, right?
Oh yeah, that was just sort of random though.
So are these things they kind of take to give the fans something that, oh, this person is this, and it kind of triggers imagination, and or is it just kind of to fill the profile?
For my group at least, most of everyone's special skills on their profile is more sort of like neta, or like
just a joke, right?
Just like
to make conversation.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first audition that you had in Japan?
I do actually. My first in-person audition. I actually, before auditioning for groups, I did have a period where I tried to do stuff solo, because I didn't really think I would be able to work well in a group. I just thought like either immediately I would be bullied for being a foreigner, be like only allowed to play the foreign character, or just have no fans because I was the foreigner. So I didn't really audition for groups for quite a while. I did audition for like idol, like singer, like solo kind of things, or things related to like voice acting and stuff like that. But I think I did my first actual idol audition for a group probably in 2018. And let's see. They kind of like, they had us in sort of like a room like this, like a rental space kind of area. And they wanted you to like just perform. Wait, actually I've done an idol audition before that.
It's all coming back.
Yeah, it came back to me. Okay, well, back to the one that I did in 2018, 2019. You had like a minute to sing and dance something, and like a minute to talk and present about yourself. And then that was it. And they're like, okay, we'll get back to you in the next week or so, if you got to the next round.
Very little time to show anything and say anything about yourself.
Yeah, just 2 minutes.
But in the case of your current group, you did your audition, you successfully passed, and then what? You get a phone call, you're like, oh, we would like to welcome you on the idol group.
For Mermal's audition, it was actually quite different. Basically, I had like a sit-down talk with the 2 producers of the group. Like, we met in a cafe, and they just talked with me about like my goals and like why I picked this group and what I had like done entertainment-wise up until then. We talked for a whole like hour or 2 maybe. They like really got to know me. And then like there and then they were like, okay, we want to take you to the next round of the audition. We'll send you a song to learn, and we'll go from there. And then like a couple weeks later, we did the in-person audition where I performed one of their songs, like the first half of it by myself. Had me sing it and dance separately, not together. And then right there and then they were like, yeah, we want you in the group.
Cool.
Yeah.
So more like a proper job interview, right? Get to know
Yeah.
you and then get to see your skills in action, so to say.
Yeah.
And then you join a group of already existing girls, I imagine. They're all there and you kind of have to join like a sports team, basically.
Yeah. Very much
How was
like
that experience for you?
When I joined, it was actually a really kind of rough experience because they were looking to add multiple members at the time that I joined. They initially wanted to add like 3 or 4 new girls. And originally, there was supposed to be me and 2 other girls joining at the same time. One girl dropped out almost immediately, like after a week.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the other girl just wouldn't show up to lessons half the time. She did wind up debuting with me, but then she like quit the group after a month because she just would not show up. So it was a really rocky time. And like the other members, the formerly existing members were kind of like they're kind of like wary of us new members because the other 2 besides me were very unstable.
So they were like, is this third one also gonna quit after another few weeks, or
like,
is she gonna stay around?
Yeah. Like, what's going on? Why did they pick these people? But it worked out in the end. Yeah.
Are all idol groups kind of course they're different, but are there like specific categories of like, this is this kind of idol group, this is that kind of idol group?
Yeah, there are some big categories, I could say. Of course, there's your more like major nationally recognized groups, like the 48 groups, or there's like a series of groups like called like Zakamichi, like Nogizaka 46. And then there's also Hello Project, which has like Morning Musume and its sister groups.
So they're like major labels, so to say.
Yeah, major labels known nationwide by like even by people that don't really know idols. And then there's indie, or like they're called Chika idols, which also has like a very huge range from like people doing self-produced stuff in front of a crowd of like maybe 2 people in a really small live house in a basement to like there's some groups that are considered Chika but still perform at Budokan, which is like a really big
performance center and sports center in Tokyo.
Holds like 8,000 people kind of thing. So there's a wide range. And within Chika idols, there's kind of like broke into multiple categories of either like kira groups, is what they're often called, like sparkly cute, your stereotypical idol, like very clean cut,
very cheerful, very energetic, and everything is cute and happy and beautiful.
And then there's groups that are more like alternative groups. They might be like more rock focused or more music focused or have like darker themes. So I feel like the underground scene is vaguely broken into those 2 categories, and then there's like more subcategories within. But
so where does your current idol group fall into?
My group is much more on the alternative side. We're very much like music focused and like focused on having members that have like very strong personalities.
So you're music focused, so I imagine you have to do a lot of performances, right?
Yeah.
So how does it work once you had a rocky start with the group, but then eventually the group came together, you've got your members. What does a typical day look like in idol life?
So my group performs maybe 3-4 times a week.
Wow, okay, that's a lot.
Sometimes more, sometimes less. Typically, every Tuesday is lesson days where we'll meet up for about 3 hours to practice for upcoming performances, learn new songs, like focus on brushing up old songs. If we have like a member change coming up, which we do at the moment, we'll work on redoing formations for dances and stuff like that. And then normally on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday, and maybe one weekday, we'll have performances. Sometimes it's just like one show. Sometimes it's 2 shows in a day. Stereotypically, most of our performances are called taibon, which is like, it'll be a show with maybe like 5 or so groups, each performing a 30-minute set. So if we have a show that where we're on at like 1 p.m., we have to be to the venue by an hour before that. So like 12, get in, get dressed, finish up our hair and makeup and whatnot. Then like, so Mermal has about 25 or so songs of our own, and our set for that day will be comprised of as many songs we can fit into our time slot for the day. And the members ourselves, we don't choose what songs we're doing. We have 2 producers, and they choose what songs, and like when we'll have an MC like talking break, if we do have one.
If you do have one, yeah.
Yeah. So like, we'll usually get the set list, either the day of or the night before our show. So in our hour backstage before the show, we go through, make sure like we can smoothly transition to the starting and ending positions of each song, go through what we're going to discuss in the MC. A lot of our songs have spots for what's called aori, which is like a time where we like pump up the crowd. And like, there's some songs like where it's chosen like who does the speaking for that song, but there's other songs where it's like a different person every time. So like, we discuss and try and make a good balance of like who's speaking at what parts and who's like pumping up the crowd at what parts. So we discuss that within the hour.
So all of these songs, for example, they are produced by your company for the specific kind of idol performance, so to say. So it's very much inclusive of the fans and the crowd.
Yeah, I would say so. Mermal, our company is very small. Again, we have 2 producers, and they're in charge of everything.
Okay.
They run the whole company. The male producer, Mr. Nagase, he writes all of our music. And then the female producer, Mrs. Numata, she does all of our choreography. Mr. Nagase has like a background. He used to be in a band. So all of our songs are very like band sounding. But they do have like spots intended for like idol calls and stuff like that.
So you said some of these songs are like MCs, and you have a kind of break and you get to talk and say something. What kind of things are you supposed to exchange with the crowd in that moment? Are there specific guidelines, or is it kind of just up to you? It's your moment, you choose freely to interact with your fans.
It really depends on what we have coming up for the group. If we have like a big concert, like a one-man live is what they're called, concerts with just our group, that usually are like an hour or 2 long, then we have to promo that within the MC time, and that will become the main focus. If we don't have anything like that coming up, then it could be just random talk amongst the members to try and let the crowd get to know us. We could promo shows that we have later that day or later that week. We could like promo new merch or whatever. It really depends. Sometimes we'll do skits.
Okay.
My group often does silly skits, or we'll do like, we had a period where we would do like gymnastics cheer formations where we would like make pyramids.
Okay.
During the MC.
So you have a break and you start suddenly like all piling up on top of each other and like, wow.
And like 1-year-old will be like, look, we're making a pyramid. When's it going to be done? Look at it. Look at over here. Look over there.
So it's very much kind of just getting the crowd to cheer.
Yeah.
Because the crowd and the fans play a very big role in this idol culture, right?
Yeah.
You said that, you had this long-standing dream of becoming an idol, and then you finally are about to step on stage for your first performance with this idol group. Did you see that kind of as I made it, I'm here, I'm finally performing as an idol?
Yeah. Like I had mentioned, I did do stuff solo beforehand, so I had been on stage before. But it was my first time, like, with an actual legitimate group. Like, I had a period where I was part of a short-term group made entirely of, like, foreign girls living in Japan. And we only did, like, 2 shows. But, so, like, I had performed as a group, but joining Mermal was different, I guess. Like, the standards were much higher than anything I had done up until then. So I was so nervous. I had never done performances that were so, like, formation intensive. Like, we're moving all over the stage. We've got 8 members and we're, like, crisscrossing multiple times throughout the song. So, like, trying to memorize all of that was really overwhelming for me when I first joined the group, and I kept on being like, oh no, I'm gonna go to the wrong spot, I'm gonna get my lyrics wrong. So, but then I got on stage and I saw, like, I had a good group of friends actually show up for my first show, and seeing them with their idols have, like, member colors usually. My color is white in my group because I'm an angelic angel, white. And also because I'm the white member, like, legitimately, so it makes it easier to remember. So yeah, there was my group of friends with their little white pen lights, and I was like, oh,
it's kind
everyone's
of
here.
Very nice to have this support group for your first performance.
Yeah.
Is this one of your favorite performances, the first one you did?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So a great memory, but far from the favorite. Do
Yeah.
you have a favorite performance? With 3 or 4 per week, I can imagine you've done quite a few by now.
Yeah.
Do you have any fond memories, perhaps? Some interactions with fans that went very well, unexpectedly, perhaps?
With fans? Let me think about that. But some of my favorite performances are, I mentioned one-man lives. They're, like, the bigger, like, full-length concerts we have. We've done lots of those since I've joined, but we've had 2 really big ones. One last year and then one just last month, actually, where we had, like, a live backing band playing with us
Cool.
while we did our show in, like, a much bigger venue, like, that holds maybe 1,000 people or so. So those 2 performances are definitely my favorite that we've done so far.
I want to talk more about the fans, because I'm very curious about this. And I know that after performances you have, like, akushu events, that these kind of handshake events.
My group in particular, no, but yes, idols do have that.
Can you explain a little bit what are they and what kind of happens during those events?
So handshake events, they're more typically something that bigger major label idols do. Usually it's done as a kind of reward for buying CDs, not as part of a show.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, you'll buy the latest single from that group, and it'll come with a little ticket that you can enter into a chance to participate in the handshake event. And then, like, they'll have, like, whole venues just with, like, the girls in different lines and little boxes waiting for their fans to come and shake their hand and say a word or 2 and then say goodbye.
That must be exhausting.
Yeah.
Just standing there for hours and just shaking your hand, saying thank you so much for buying the latest CD, and, like, kind of go to the next one, and no time to really interact with them, right? Just a very brief meet and greet.
It is very brief. I know there's fans that will buy like hundreds of copies so they can have, like, a whole hour with their idol instead of, like, 10 seconds.
That's how they get CD sales, I guess, right?
Yeah.
That's why you still see CDs for sale everywhere in Japan.
Yeah.
Because you get the tickets to the handshake events.
Yeah.
Fans can sometimes be, a little crazy, I guess. And I've seen situations where, for me, it's been very confusing. And you mentioned earlier that there are some very kind of underground performances and some idols performing by themselves in a basement or sometimes on a street corner. And they'll have 1 or 2, usually much older gentlemen, cheering passionately for them and kind of buying the CD and so on.
Right.
Have you had these kind of experiences?
Yeah, I have, for sure. It's a very standard thing in the idol community. Even with my current group, I would say the majority of our fans are older men, for sure. But but they're not as creepy as you would think. Usually. There is like this special case now and then, but normally they're pretty normal.
So what are these kind of in the West? Let's say you have a band, people like the band, and they're usually a big fan of the music, right? But in idol culture, I feel like as an outsider, it sometimes looks like they're more fan of a specific idol as a person,
that's definitely
and not necessarily the music or the performance that is going on, right?
Yeah.
So, is there any sort of how can I say, maybe training when you enter the idol world in how to deal with fans? Because it feels like a lot of the sales, the business side of it comes from the interaction of the idol with the fans and not necessarily just making something.
There isn't really training for that kind of thing. You kind of have to be really observant and like watch the other girls around you. Maybe, get the feel of it by going as a fan yourself to shows is a really good way to get the feel of it. A fan interaction is something that I'm still like, I feel I'm not the best with. Underground idols do, after every show we have what's called like a tokutenkai, where it's like meet and greet time with your fans. It's not a handshake, but fans get to take pictures with their favorite member. They'll pay like maybe 1,000, 2,000 yen for one single Polaroid picture that's like signed by their favorite girl, and then they get to like speak with that member for a minute. And like that's like the whole big moneymaker for underground idols. Like our salaries are based entirely off of how many pictures we take with fans, typically. And it's sort of the whole thing that supports the underground idol business. And there really is no training for it. Like you really just have to communicate the best that you can and hope for the best. There are girls that will like be very hands-on with their fans, which is a way to go about things, but maybe it's not something I do.
So for you personally, what are the kind of interactions? Wow.
Oh.
It's really coming down outside. What kind of interactions do you particularly enjoy with fans?
I really enjoy, I have one fan who every time she comes to see me, she always brings me a letter. And I love reading her letters every time. It really makes me happy. Like she'll write like 3 or 4 pages about like, like how she felt after watching our last show, or like what she's been doing in the time up until our next show, and like stuff like that. It's so cute. It's so sweet.
So if this fan is watching this today, know your letters are very much appreciated.
I'm sure she is. Maybe.
When I was doing some research and tried to understand a little bit more, I came up on the term Wotagei.
Oh,
What does it mean? What exactly is this?
Wotagei is it's kind of like a fan dance. So typically while watching idol shows, fans hold like pen lights or like sairyumu, like little glowing sticks in their favorite member's color. And Wotagei is sort of like dance moves with the pen lights in like time with the song. Not many people do it anymore though. It is still a thing, but mostly people film like videos of them doing Wotagei to their favorite song, but they won't actually like dance along in the Wotagei style at shows.
Yeah, I can imagine it's quite complex, right? Sometimes the venues are small, you don't have space to do it, you don't have the lights. How big are the venues usually there when you get to perform? It really depends?
It really depends. The places we perform typically hold a couple hundred of people, but
that's already a big crowd. I mean, standing in front of 200 people and performing.
Usually, like, it's that big of a venue, but usually there'll only be like maybe 50 or so in the crowd, maybe even less some days. I feel like nowadays, more so than Wotagei, calling has kind of really replaced it. Like chants, fan chants almost, in sort of time with the song has really become.
How does this work? Like calling, how do I have to picture this in a crowd?
So like there's a series of like made up like these calls or chants, and I guess they kind of get passed around either by like hearing them or by word of mouth or through the internet. But like there's kind of like similar rhythm patterns in idol songs often, like where people will like throw in the fan chants. So a song could like be in the little instrumental break, and then fans will be like Shai Kuzo, fire, cyber, tiger, fiber, something, something, ja ja.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's really like a specific fan culture around.
Yeah.
You were saying that a lot of your income also depends on kind of how you interact, and that a big part of the business model is sales of items, photos taken together. But I can imagine you have a lot of performances, you have to do a lot of training, so it is a full-time job, right? It's not a. Some people you can do, of course, by yourself and train at home and perform on the weekends, but for you it's a full-time job. So how does it work then for you to kind of manage all of this and all these trainings, performances, and having to interact constantly with the fans?
For me, because like, well, for me in particular, because I'm, you know, a foreigner, I'm here on a normal work visa, I pretty much wind up not having any days off, like ever.
Wow, that's very little rest.
Yeah, but I don't know, I've just kind of gotten used to it. Let's see, but for girls that aren't me, I know most people either will work part-time jobs or like live at home while doing idol stuff. While idol will take up like probably at least half of your week, it's possible to like schedule things alongside it, because often performances will be either only in the afternoon or only in the evening. Like maybe on weekends it'll be all day, having 2 or 3 shows, but on weekdays you're pretty able to manage time how you'd like, as long as you keep your evenings open. Or like a lot of groups, you know in advance when you're going to have shows, usually a month in advance almost. So you're able to schedule your life around that and make time for yourself, make time for other things.
I want to move a little bit to the idol industry in general.
Okay.
And I'm very curious, like, do you know where this kind of all started, this idol culture? Like, was there, this is the first idol group kind of thing?
First idol group, I'm honestly not that big on the history, but I know like the idol industry really took off in the 80s, 70s and 80s in Japan. And before groups, it was really mainly focused on like solo singer idols. And idols in the 80s were very much more close to like your typical singer, your typical artist nowadays. The standards were much higher. Like these girls could really, really sing, and would often be even writing their own lyrics and stuff sometimes too. I mean, there are plenty of people that had their music produced by others, but there would be like big auditions through like big major companies, and then they would find their new star and they'd like have their big debut on TV, and it was a much bigger thing. The number of idols was like a lot smaller. There wasn't really a big indies industry at the time. So everything was much more on a grand scale with smaller numbers and just solo girls singing.
And it really took off, but then you said it changed, right? Because back then they were writing their own lyrics, they were performing, and they had to really be able to sing and dance. And nowadays,
and be actual artists.
I understand it that like some still do, but there's also obviously many more idol groups, and some of them they're put together, but they don't really perform. They're there to be just themselves and how the fans like them, right?
Yeah. I think that really changed in like the late 90s, early 2000s when groups became more of a standard. There was like an idol ice age in Japan in like the early 90s where there weren't many groups, there weren't many solo artists either. And up until then, there had been some groups starting to show up of like maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people. But then Morning Musume was like the first bigger idol group. I mean, it started out with 5 people, but then like they constantly had auditions adding in new girls and stuff. And Morning Musume taking off and having like nationwide fame led to other groups following a similar formula. Another big thing that led to idol groups more so was Onyanko Club, which was like the predecessor of AKB48, produced by the same guy, Akimoto Yasushi, which was, it was kind of like very similar, where there was a number of girls in this group that each kind of had their own things they were doing outside of the group too. Like some did acting, some did solo singing, some did modeling. But groups kind of became the standard after that and led to more of what we see in the idol scene nowadays.
Did it really spread overseas a lot, or did it remain a very typical Japanese cultural phenomenon?
I think idol culture didn't really start spreading overseas until pretty recently. Through like idol anime, I think was one of the biggest things that kind of brought attention to idols from overseas. Shows like Love Live, mainly Love Live, but also like Idol Master, and more recently Oshinoko has brought in a big spotlight to the idol industry again.
To me, it seemed like it's very Japanese, but also now more recently like Korean with K-pop idols kind of thing. And we don't necessarily have this idol culture in the West. We are fans of maybe a group, a singer, a songwriter, and we like their music or their performances, but there's something different, right? About the idol subculture is a thing of its own.
Yeah.
Can anyone become an idol? If I decide I want to be an idol, I can go tomorrow and just apply to auditions. Do I have a chance, or am I already disqualified for certain reasons?
Maybe if there was like a place trying to make like an Oji-san idol group.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm way too old for becoming an idol already.
Yeah. Even for indies groups, like usually the highest cutoff you'll see is like 28, 30 at the very latest. But there are, in like the really deep down underground scene, there are a lot of people that self-produce who are much older, who would stereotypically, like physically, looks-wise, and like skill-wise would not pass auditions anywhere, who are very much performing more as like a hobby and for themselves. That's kind of where I first started performing when I first moved here. Like because before moving to Japan, I had posted like what you saw my YouTube. I had been posting dance and song covers online. When I announced that I was moving to Japan, I actually started getting offers from really small, super underground events being like, hey, do you want to perform like 3 songs at this little show in this tiny dumpster in Shibuya? And like I was so surprised when I first got there, because like I had pictured in my mind more standard idols, but like the other girls performing with me there's such a huge variety. Like there you would see like elementary schoolers like there with their moms making them perform, which is that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, let's get into that in a second. But
and then there'd also be like probably ladies in their like 30s, 40s, and they're all most in those kind of events. It's almost entirely cover songs. Like it's very much more of a hobby and just people expressing themselves for fun, but they still call themselves idols. So like in a way, anyone can become an idol. Whether or not you'll actually be seen as one is very different. And whether or not you'll get a following is entirely different.
That's a big question.
Too.
Probably not.
Yeah.
You brought up a topic of underage girls often auditioning, sometimes very young.
Yeah.
And I've seen videos online of girls 6, 7, 8-year-old performing and then doing those handshake events and having older gentlemen go. Of course, they are adults is there a legal framework around being an idol, becoming an idol, protecting young children from, I don't want to insinuate abuse, but it does seem somewhat strange from the outside.
There definitely should be more of a frame of something to protect younger girls, but I feel like there really isn't at this point. There are still like a lot of younger girls pushed into the idol industry from like their parents' dreams. And again, because there's like the time limit on idols, and because it's often seen as like a stepping stone to moving on to another part of the entertainment industry, like girls really want to start young. So like, especially for more big agencies, some places will have training programs full of like, again, elementary schoolers or like middle schoolers, girls who don't really entirely know what they're doing yet. Whether or not they move on to actually join those groups is different, but like, I feel like the push to start young has not changed at all over the years, and yeah, it does make me concerned sometimes watching.
So not too many rules on that side of things, but after you join an idol group, when you become an idol, are there certain rules you have to follow, such as maybe no partners in public?
Yeah. Yeah. The whole no love rule. I feel like though that's kind of tamed down over the years. I'm not so sure with, of course, major companies, bigger groups. They might actually have like, do not date anyone written in your contract. But I know for the underground world, at least, it's very much like, okay, well, you can date, but let management know before you start dating someone if you've broken up with someone, and do not post about it on social media ever. If you're, caught posting about, or even like hinting that you might have a partner, your contract will be ended immediately, kind of thing.
There was a case that made the news. I think it was 2013, right? Her name was Minami Minegishi from the group we talked about before, AKB48.
Yeah.
And she shaved her head to apologize to her fans because she had a boyfriend.
Yeah, a very famous case. AKB, because they, at that time, 2013, they were the biggest group in the nation. Everyone knew them. And like, they kind of like made it their thing that they had the love ban, the no love rule. So there were paparazzi after them all the time. And it wasn't just Minami. There were like multiple girls that got caught having relationships and were in scandals and had like, had things happen to them accordingly. Like other members got moved to other groups, or like maybe just were kicked out of the group entirely. But she wasn't forced to shave her head. She did it on her own will to like apologize. And I don't know if that's like really necessary.
I mean, this case really kind of caught international media attention, right? It was mentioned in CNN, BBC.
Yeah.
Has this kind of pushed for some change in the industry to be like, well, maybe our rules about this are too strict, and kind of a reconsideration of the kind of pressure to put on the performance?
I think it has pushed for things to change, especially within AKB itself. Later on within the group, like I think it was maybe last year or 2 years ago, another really popular member got caught having a boyfriend, or like with a boy. And that caused like other AKB members to speak out that we don't have that love ban rule anymore. Like I don't know if they ever did actually have it as a rule, or if it was just like a publicity stunt kind of thing. But it has prompted bigger, members of major groups like AKB48 to speak out that, we have our own private life. We keep it to ourselves. You don't need to know about it. But it's not something that's illegal as a member of this group. So calm down.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple of times now the word graduation.
Ah, yes.
So when I talk about graduation, I'm thinking graduating from school, graduating from college. What is a graduation in the idol world?
It's the term used normally when a member quits the group, when they leave the group and move on. Of course, there are cases like with scandals where a member is fired. But stereotypically, like because again, idol is often seen as like a stepping stone before moving on to something else. Like with school, you graduate and move on to the next part of your life. So with idol, when you're done with idol, you graduate and move on to whatever it is you're doing next.
Is it common to change groups, to graduate from one group and then go to another group? Or generally speaking, you stick with one until you graduate and then you kind of move to a different career in the entertainment industry or else?
Nowadays, it's become more and more common to move on to other groups, especially within the indie scene. Like you'll often see girls graduate to move to a bigger group and then graduate that group to move to a bigger group, so on. But with the more like nationally famous, majorly produced groups, it's usually like you're in that group until the end and then you move on to something else.
It's interesting because we recently talked to a Manzai comedian, Nick, and he was also saying that a lot of people get into Manzai to become popular enough to be on publicity, to be on commercials, and or to become talento, kind of quote unquote graduate from Manzai and get out of it.
Yeah.
And it seems like idol is in a similar way, and so it makes me feel that the entertainment industry in Japan is very much geared towards pushing people to do a lot of work. Like you said, you barely have days off, and to get out of it to become talento, to just become a figure of Japanese public life on television or so on.
That's very much a thing.
How about for yourself? You've been an idol now already quite a couple of years. What are the things you would like to do with your group? Kind of maybe concerts you want to do, or?
Well, it's been a little over a year since I joined Mermal. Like I mentioned, I did do solo work before. But within Mermal, I've only been there for a little over a year now. Mermal is still, as a group, Mermal has been around for about we're almost 5 years old now. And while we do have a steady following, and like, we're pretty much kind of in like, if there is like a scale within the indies idol industry, we'd probably be in the middle. I would like us to get to the point where we're a name that any idol fan will know, where we can hold shows in venues that hold like 1,000 people more regularly and like actually sell out those venues. I don't know if like signing to a major label would be in our future and if that would be a good move. But I would like for all of us members to be able to make a steady living on just being an idol and be able to focus on our music and
We talked a lot about girl groups mostly. But at the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned there are also male idol groups.
There are, yes.
Is it very similar or is it completely different?
I think it's pretty different. Male groups, for one, the age thing is nowhere near as huge of a factor. Like often, especially with the major like nationally recognized groups, you've got groups with men in their like 50s still.
Oh, so I do have a chance.
Yeah, if you had started when you were like 10. Yeah. Who are married even.
Okay.
And like, so love and age isn't an issue as much for men, which is completely unfair and stupid, but it is what it is. And the underground male idol groups are very much more akin to hosts, in my opinion. Like, they're very much like all over their fans, like very touchy-feely, like very much like using like methods that are kind of like really inappropriate and probably not a good idea to get their fans to spend more and more and more money on them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're their whole deep dark something.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
quite different.
Very different. Yeah.
With for women, the kind of graduation date being younger than for men, have you already given some thought about what you'd like to do after you graduate?
Yes and no. Like sometimes I think to myself, oh, I don't really want to continue being an idol after I'm 30. Like, that sounds like a lot. But at the same time, I'm like, well, that's in how many years? And like, honestly, as someone who's only ever really wanted to do entertainment work since I was little, like, thinking about what I would like to move on to afterwards, just, I don't even know where to start. But I do love singing. When I moved here, besides being an idol, like, one of my goals was either to be a voice actor or to do like anison, like songs for anime. So like, if there would be a possible path where I could do music like that on my own in the future, maybe that's something I would consider. I also really enjoy modeling, which I do now, but if I could do that more full-time, that would be interesting too.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of opportunities in the end.
Yeah. I also enjoy like fashion-related stuff. I translate and interpret as well. That's another, possible. There's lots of different possibilities.
Lots of possibilities. But
We'll
looking
see.
back now at your experience in Japan, your first one being when you were in high school, and now, has joining the idol world, universe, culture kind of changed your perspective a little bit, or just reinforced the ideas you had or what you came looking for in Japan?
It's done both. When I was in high school and first year, I was like determined that I was going to be the first foreign member from like a European background in a big group like Morning Musume or AKB48. And reality is a lot harsher than, one would think at 16.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, that didn't happen. And I really pushed for that to happen for a very long time before I accepted that it just wasn't going to be what happened. But being in the underground industry, I've met people that have like, I've had interactions and experiences that have kind of given me both hope and like let me down. There very much is a sort of, I wouldn't say hate towards foreign members, but like oftentimes I feel like the stereotypical idol fan will see members like me or other foreign members of groups almost as like the mascot of the group and not an actual human being, which is really annoying. And like, I would love to make that change by getting Merkmal to become bigger, if that does change anything. But then there's other people that have really like given me hope with how they interact with me and like the words that they've said to me and actions, especially from members within my group. Before joining Mermal, I actually worked at a maid cafe for about 3 years. And while you would think maid cafe and idols, the culture is actually really similar in a lot of ways. And my experiences there were not that great, to be honest. There was a lot of like bullying behind the scenes, and a lot of girls would just like be so rude to each other, so catty. But that hasn't been the case in Mermal at all. We're very much like a family, very much a team, working towards the same goals. So that's given me a lot of hope. Yeah.
If some of your fans are listening or watching this episode today, I imagine most of your fans are Japanese speakers, but maybe some of them will make it through all the way to here. Is there a message you'd like to share with them?
Well, thank you for always supporting Mermal and supporting me. I hope to see the view from a bigger stage with you guys in the future. And I hope that I can help Mermal become a group that's able to perform all over Japan and eventually overseas too. And stick along for the ride because we still got a lot coming.
A lot of exciting things coming, big concerts
Hopefully.
and many more smaller ones at different venues across Tokyo and maybe across Osaka as well sometime.
But yeah, we do come to Osaka every couple months, so feel free to stop by.
Well, thank you very much, Heidi, for sharing your insights. I feel like maybe we didn't cover everything about idol culture, but we covered quite a lot.
Yeah.
Is there maybe one thing that comes to mind right now that was important for you to say that we didn't really get to touch upon? Any misconceptions about idols you want to dispel once and for all?
I can't think of anything at the moment.
All right. Well, then if anything comes up later or anyone has further questions, let us know. Maybe we can do a round 2 next year and kind of catch up on the growth of Merkmal.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan. Thank you, Heidi, for coming, and we'll be back again next week. Bye. Are you looking for another podcast episode to listen to next? If you like the one you just listened to, I'm sure you'll also enjoy the one that I've selected and linked in the description down below. Go check it out.